I do want to tell you Ambassador Xu is on a very tight schedule, so he will not be taking your questions. So I'm hoping to take some of the questions I've already got from the audience for you. Now, for all of you, and this is not just those who are covering diplomacy closely, we know this. From the beginning of this decade, from the 2020s, India and China's relationship has been a roller coaster ride. I think from the highs we saw just before the decade in Wuhan and Mamallapuram, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping met, not just held meetings, but spent time together, hours, one-on-one. And that seemed to be a high in the relationship, but it was followed by one of the lows. The first such incident in more than 40 years, in most violent point in Galwan, before they began to resume ties in 2024. So we want to speak on this session about what's happening now. How the process of revival of ties came about, that took Prime Minister Modi to Tianjin last year, and could bring President Xi to India later this year or soon, but also of how they are scripting the resumption of that part of the relationship that really did get most ruptured, the people-to-people ties, the trust, the travel, the tourism, and the trade. Our guest is Ambassador Xu, and thank you so much for speaking. I know that you don't come out often and take questions, so it's a particular privilege for the Hindu that you have come here. I want to start with how you arrived in India in May 2024. We were just about to have elections, and relations still were extremely strained. Did you know already that the process was going to start, and who took the first step?
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. So I'm very glad to visit Bangalore and attend the Hindu Huddle. This is my first time to visit this very beautiful city, and I'm very happy to answer your questions and share my views with friends at present. You know that the China-India relationship is one of the most important relationships in this world. Its importance extends the bilateral scope and carries the global significance, its global strategic significance. The development of the relationship between our two sides has drawn high attention from the world throughout the time. And recently, I'm very glad to see that tangible and gradual progress has been made in our bilateral ties. We can find that we have resumed the direct flights between the cities. We have resumed the pilgrimage. And from the Indian side, India has eased restrictions to the Chinese people's visa and the Chinese investment. So in fact, that this process started almost 1 year ago and still underway. But of course, those achievements made due to the joint efforts by both of us, our sides. And I'm expecting that more fruitful outcomes will be achieved in the coming time. Thank you.
Sure, and it is necessary also to look at what happened in the past in a way to make sure perhaps it doesn't again. You know, in the Hindu, a few days ago, former Indian ambassador to China, Ashok Kanta, wrote a piece talking about how some of the gains of the past, some of the trust of the India-China relationship of the past had been forged in agreements. There was 1993 LAC Border Peace and Tranquility Agreement, 2005, a political agreement on finding an understanding. Recently, we saw in Beijing another meeting of the two sides. I wanted to ask, Ambassador, what are some of the lessons that have been learned in this process of things you can do and things that should not be repeated, in a sense, to ensure that this kind of situation that we saw, violence on the line of actual control in which 20 Indian soldiers were killed, as well as Chinese soldiers, does not happen again?
So in regard of your question, what kind of lessons can be drawn from the freeze and resumption of the ties? I think it's true, we have some lessons to conclude, and even some lessons are very valuable. So first of all, I think that the leaders of our two countries play a leading role in providing strategic guidance for the relations between our two countries. Both President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi attach great importance to the bilateral ties and view the bilateral relationship from strategic and long-term perspective. Since 2020, they had maintained multiple interactions with each other. And both of them, and the most important two meetings were respectively held in Kazan in 2024, Russia, and in Tianjin 2025 in China. And they agreed that a stable and healthy relationship between China and India will not only serve the interests of our two countries, but benefit the peace and prosperity of this region. So, according to the consensus of the leaders, the diplomatic teams of our two sides have been working very hard to step up cooperation and communication to advance the implementation of the common understanding of the two leaders. So just now, at the very beginning, I just mentioned the progress they have made. This is the progress they have made and has been witnessed by us. So I would say that the leaders has played led the country, led the relations of our two countries from a reset, from a fresh start to a new level of improvement. And the second lesson, I would say that the correct mutual perception has given us a clear positioning in our respective diplomacy. You know that the two leaders just agreed China and India are cooperation partners, not rivals, are development opportunities, not threats. This is a very important orientation of the relations of the two countries. You know that China and India are the only two countries in the world with a pure population more than 1.4 billion people. And both of us are major emerging economies with broad prospects for development. So these similarities just tell us we should expand our common grounds and narrow differences to avoid misunderstanding and misjudgment. We should find ways to get well along with each other. So in fact that we have been doing in this way and have been benefited from it. Just like an Indian proverb says that help your brother's boat across, your own will reach the shore. In China, we have a similar saying that those help others will receive helps in return. So the wisdom of the ancient philosophy injects new momentum into the development of the relations. And also have the third, that experience, I just want to say that an objective view toward the differences has been taken by our two sides. China and India has more than 2,000 years of history of exchanges, but you can find out that the twists turns were only a very short episode in the history, and the friendly exchanges remain the defining feature in the relations. I still remember last year when what Prime Minister Modi said when he was interviewed by podcast. He just pointed out that the differences between India and China are as natural as in the family. Our focus is to prevent these differences from escalating into disputes. So the Prime Minister took this very wise view from historic and strategic perspective. So China and India, as two ancient civilizations, we have enough wisdom and capability to find effective ways to accommodate each other's core interests and major concerns and properly settle all those differences through dialogue and consultation. I am confident in that.
All right, but even so, the boundary question remains and is being discussed. The truth is this was no ordinary incident that we saw, and therefore now we see a much quicker pace of the boundary talks that are going on right now. Do we see some light at the end of that tunnel? You know, we heard from External Affairs Minister Jaishankar say, including in an interview to the Hindu, that we don't know why what happened in 2020 happened, why the PLA, he said, behaved the way it did. And of course, on the Chinese side, there are questions about what the Indian side was doing. I come back to that. Do you see light when it comes to the boundary question?
You know that it is true we have made progress and improvement in our relations, but the full normalization of our ties still calls the joint and continued efforts from our two countries. So how to realize the full normalization? I think the boundary question will be a very important one. We should handle it properly. And in fact, that the boundary question between our two countries is very complex and sensitive, left over from the history. It concerns about the sentiments of the two peoples and requires dialogue and consultation to seek a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable resolution. And in recent years, our two sides have kept very close communication on the boundary question through these important mechanisms, just like the meeting of the special representative on the boundary question and the working mechanism for consultation and coordination on border affairs. And I still remember that last August, Chinese Foreign Minister Mr. Wang Yi paid a visit to India and co-chaired with His Excellency the National Security Advisor, Ms. Doval, the 24th meeting of the SR. And they reached a 10-point consensus and agreed to set up an expert group to explore the early harvest of boundary delimitation on appropriate sectors. And they also agreed to set up a working group to advance the border management. And only last week, the 35th meeting of the WNCC was held in Beijing. The important issues, just like the boundary delimitation, the border management, the mechanism building, and the cross-border communication cooperation were fully addressed by that meeting. So nowadays, I will assure you that the border situation is peaceful and stable. And China always believes that the boundary question should be placed as a proper position in our relations, and we should not allow the boundary question define the overall relationship of our two countries. Still less, let specific differences affect the bilateral cooperation. So I think, of course, the boundary issue is very critical. And also, you know that between our two sides, we have another issue should be called attention from the two sides. That one is that we should step up exchanges to enhance mutual trust. Just now I said that we can take an objective view to all the differences. It is true, but in fact, the mutual trust between our two sides and the deficit is very serious. You know that the exchanges between the decision-making bodies of the two governments are not enough. We used to have about 50 mechanisms, official mechanisms for dialogue and consultation between our two sides. Unfortunately, most of them remain stalled. The insufficient exchange may probably will result in the increase of misunderstanding and misjudgment. And also, the level of people-to-people exchange is low and unbalanced. Just now that we do not have any Chinese journalists based in India. It's, this kind of exchange is very low. So it will be, detrimental to enhancing the mutual understanding and friendship between our two sides. China is ready to resume all the exchanges with India in various fields and at various levels. So as to, increase our standings. And I'm sure that the more exchange we have, the better we understand each other, the stronger the mutual trust and will grow. So it's a very good way, in fact.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Ambassador, because the mutual trust, as you said, means bringing back these mechanisms. Now, in the last year, since you've certainly been here, we've seen the resumption of travel. We've seen flights restarted with some of the cities. Bengaluru used to be called the Silicon City. In many ways, it is India's tech capital. And there's a question that we constantly hear from businessmen here, but also businessmen in China, Indian businessmen you would have heard, about what we call non-tariff barriers, the idea that there are restrictions on Chinese exports of certain things like rare earths. There are on the Indian side, we saw restrictions on Chinese investment being lessened. Where do you see the real hurdles when it comes to increasing trade and what India always wants, increasing balanced trade? And how much do you think these two countries can cooperate in the field of AI?
That's true that we should expand mutually beneficial cooperation and pursue common development. You know that both China and India have made economic development strategies. At present, China is engaged in the rejuvenation through modernization, and India is driving forward the Viksit Bharat 2047 vision. So the development is the biggest common denominator between our two countries. And in fact, that recent years, we have seen the steady growth of economic and trade cooperation. China is the biggest trading partner for India, according to the statistics of the Indian government. Last year, the trade volume between our two sides was about $151 billion. So I would say that there is a very strong potentiality to strengthen our cooperation in the trade and economic field. Just now you raised the issue about the limits on each side. But in fact, I would say that for Chinese side, we encourage the Indian friends to go to China to expand its cooperation with Chinese partners. We welcome Indian friends to go to attend the Shanghai Import Expo to promote your products, and go to Kunming to attend the China South Asia Expo to promote, to strengthen your ties with the Chinese counterparts. And I'm very happy to see that gradually Indian side has eased the restrictions on the Chinese investment. You have changed a little bit on the PN3. But frankly speaking, it's still a part, that optimization.
Sure.
Not a complete rational.
And we've also seen,
yes.
when you said, visit, we've also seen the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. I want to quickly segue to some more multilateral issues, because of course India and China are part of BRICS, they're part of SCO. Recently, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said in Shangri-La, we need more ships, less Shangri-La. In a sense, he was saying that you need to have less of these, coalitions that don't do much more than conversation. Can BRICS actually come together later this year with some kind of a cohesive agenda, particularly given, every other session has spoken about the war in Iran and how it has really disrupted global trade. And would President Xi Jinping be coming to India later this year for the BRICS summit?
you just put the 4 important organizations in the same box. It's a little bit difficult for me to answer. You know that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the BRICS. Over the 20 years, it has evolved from a 4-member group into the greater BRICS. Now its member states has contributed more than 40% of the global economic growth. And according to the IMF data, if measured by the PPP, the purchasing power parity, the combined economic output of the BRICS has surpassed that of G7. So in these terms, that BRICS is not only an important platform for the emerging countries, but also a very important key driver for global governance reform. And also this year marks the 25th anniversary of the SCO. Originally it was called as Shanghai 5. Now it has become a comprehensive regional organization. And its population accounts for about 40% of the global total, and its GDP accounts for about 25% of the global GDP. It's also a very important organization in maintaining the regional security and promoting the regional cooperation. And the BRICS, you know that, and the SCO serve as vital platforms for developing countries to strengthen solidarity and cooperation, to participate in the global governance. The vigorous evolvement of the BRICS and the SCO reflects the profound change of the global power landscape, and also embodies the international community's call for greater democracy in the international relations. Not long ago, a very important poll report was released by the Indian think tank. It says that about 73% of the young people of India believes the BRICS and SCO can serve as alternatives to the Western-led global governance mechanisms. So I think this is a very good answer to your question.
All right, so there are places they can work. Here in South Asia, and I can't let you go without asking about it, you've served in Afghanistan as well. The basic hurdle, if you ask me, to mutual trust is China's Pakistan relationship. A year ago, when we were all here for the Hindu Huddle and Operation Sindoor was underway, the India-Pakistan 4-day conflict, there was a sense in India that China had really supported Pakistan. Is this, according to you, going to become a hurdle again? Because of course, you know, the conflict continues, the tensions with Pakistan continue. How does China work with India and South Asia while this does?
China, you know, that attaches great importance to its relations with neighboring countries. Guided by the principle of amity, sincerity, mutual benefits, and inclusiveness, China pursues its cooperative and friendly ties with all neighboring countries, including South Asia countries. And Pakistan and India are neighbors to each other, and also neighbors to Pakistan and India, also neighbors to China. We just hope that India and Pakistan will seek the resolutions on the differences through negotiations and dialogue, because geographically you can never separate it from each side. The good relations between your two countries will benefit the two peoples and the two countries, and also it will be conducive to maintain the peace and peace, development, and prosperity of this region. So that's why we support India and Pakistan to settle all differences through negotiations and dialogue.
All right. Ambassador, I'm going to thank you for your candid answers. Before you go, an answer on President Xi coming to India. Is this likely this year or sometime soon?
You know that this year, India is the presidency of the BRICS. And in fact, that China has actively participated in all the events under the framework of the BRICS. And you know that the summit is the highlight of the BRICS. And we also believe that the meeting by the leaders will steer the high-quality development of this organization in the future. So China, together with all those member countries, we are fully getting prepared for this very important occasion. And now there are still 3 months for us to get prepared. So I couldn't give you a very exact answer and proper information now, but I hope you will keep tuned, and we will keep you informed on time.
All right. So the normalization is a work in progress, and watch this space for more on India, China. I'm sorry we can't take questions. Ambassador Xu does have to go, but Ambassador Xu Feihong, thanks so much for joining us.